Welcome. This will be my thoughts on Runaways Season 2, Episode 12, Earth Angel. The episode is rated TV-14. So will this video be? There will be spoilers for the show leading up to, including this episode, possibly other MCU and or adjacent stuff. And yeah, another episode that I absolutely loved. I am really looking forward to finding out. I'm genuinely not sure how they're going to close out this season. Yeah, let's see. I think we are gonna do some video recommendations as the very next thing. So I am just gonna, let's see. Oh, I am struggling to remember. Okay, I'll have it momentarily. Here we go. Yes, that's it. Yeah, so summer news, Trump's desperate attempts to rewrite history. The Bravery of Transphobes Doesn't Exist by Jamie Dodger. The Tabernacle, Why Ethan Klein and So Many Israelis Hate Living in Israel. Offbeat Kiki, The Spectacle of Suffering, video essay. And Samantha Lux, Joe Rogan is Wrong About Trans People. All excellent videos. I'm going to try to keep this mostly chronological. So, yeah, let's see. I do not recall. No, yeah, I think I remember. Yeah, so we start with the sort of Groundhog Day thing. I appreciate that this is not actually the only MCU adjacent show that had that, so that's fun. And I'm impressed that they didn't like way overdo it, because it's such a fun thing to play with for writers, directors, and so on and so forth. Actors, not least of. But yeah, let's see. One of them was named Mary. I'm afraid I forget the other name, but two of them, they think they're there for a promotion, and we see some people sneaking up, and we, of course, already know that has to be Pride. And although they're not so proud that they don't hide their faces, and they use they test stuff on these two, and it was kind of fun, the bit with, like, it was one of those things where they mix the funny with the disturbing, because it's a little funny, the thing with, they start mispronouncing their words because of the drug isn't quite intense enough. It doesn't knock them out, but it does have an impact on their, well, let's see, I guess I don't know if it's the brain or if it's like the muscles they use to form words exactly, but something. And yeah, because it's not quite enough, they're like, well, let's reset and run it again, and they're already even more confused. And then later we see they don't even remember, they're not even sure what day of the week it is. Like, genuinely, really, messed up as just, yeah, and at least one of them even says, are we really doing this? So, yeah, meet the old Pride. Same as the old Pride, maybe, it's not looking that different. And that is, of course, the thing, absolutely, yeah, let's see. Power corrupts, absolute power corrupts, absolutely. And I appreciate technically it's actually, power reveals. We've since realized that. But yeah, that is the thing. Like, is it possible to use Pride for good? Because it used to be that, Jonah took care of them and secretly he was working on, flying away. He was leaving, though not on a jet plane, and now, he was going to leave the rest of them in the dust, literally. But now they're trying to use those same resources to find their kids. Seems altruistic, selfless, But what they're doing here is really, really disturbing, I appreciate they didn't feel the need to show it more than, we see two run-throughs of it. And, I mean, based on how confused they are in the later scene, those were not the only two. I mean, I don't know, maybe a dozen or something. Now, I think, yeah, that brings us to the, I guess the next thing might be when there's the Runaways meeting, and yeah, Alex continuing to be really harsh. And yeah, I appreciated the thing about, Nico saying, I'm not a dictator. Either everyone goes or no one does. And then Alex like, then no one does. Well, that backfired in a spectacular way. And yeah, hearing Carolina talk about how she really needs to get her mom out of there, and Vaughn called, he's regretful, he explained how bad the crater is. Really appreciate that by the end of this episode, Leslie is back. I think it would have been too much, especially if they weren't gonna. I think it's an interesting place to leave. I don't know if we're gonna see her mom again, Susan again, but even if we don't, this is a good place to leave it off. And yeah, I appreciate they were able to complete that. And it really has only been 2 episodes, hasn't it? I think, because the episode before, yeah, because before that there was a 1 episode that ended with her being taken there, or yeah, them doing something to Leslie, and now, yeah, I because there's only so much you can play with there. There's not that many different things. I really appreciate this. This is the kind of thing where if the show was like, let's go 30 years or more older, we'd have to sit through scenes and endless scenes of just like, look at how boring it is to be there. It sure does suck that she had, and I appreciate, look, as mentioned in an earlier video on this show, I appreciate the potential poetic justice of it, but like, let's keep the story moving instead. I really appreciate how fast fiction can move these days. I still have a lot of fondness for older stuff. I appreciate other things about, yeah. I will say I have an easier time doing that for movies than shows. I have, at this point, I don't know. I'm not sure I'm going to watch that many shows that are like, I don't know, probably before 2000. I think a show would really have to be spectacular for me to get into it if it came out before then. I mean, let me know if you have a candidate in mind in the comment section. Let me know in the comment section if you have a candidate in mind. You don't have to have the candidate in mind in the comment section. That's putting a hat on a hat. Anyway, I feel like the next thing was maybe Chase talking to, and I appreciate he, at first, mom is like, Janet is like, pancakes, waffles, the secret of the universe. And what do you want for breakfast? Anything. And at first he's like, just have the shake and some pancakes, because like she really is trying. She does just want him back, And yeah, he talks a little bit to Victor, and it's this thing of like, listen, I came back because you said you were sick. So how sick are you? Because me and the other runaways do have a wager going. I wasn't supposed to say that out loud. And, he says, well, I'm losing time. And look, physical signs of infection, so he genuinely does not know. But and this is actual Victor, not alien Victor. Yeah. So that is, of course, that is part of, we understand by the end of the episode, he wanted to bring him back so as to be able to bring him into Pride. And it really is fascinating the way, because like, I don't feel like they have absolved him of the abuse. Like, he even, in this episode, in a scene, Chase is like, what are you talking about? Pigskin? We don't throw a football around. I play lacrosse. Who are you, and what have you done with the real Victor Stein? He genuinely, they're not saying that he didn't do what he did, but they're saying he does. It's possible, at least, that he wants something that he thinks would be good for Chase. And just to be clear, I'm not saying that you should have to forgive someone for abuse because of that, but it is one of those things where, people are complicated, and it's important to acknowledge, and honestly, in part because that fact, honestly, in part because otherwise, if you think that it's 100% black or white, if you think either someone is an abuser or they're a human being, there can't be any middle ground. Well, as soon as you see just one human trait in an abuser, you might think, oh, they're not an abuser at all. And this helps, and the show is in part for teenagers. This can maybe help them identify abuse sooner so that they can, avoid abusers. And I guess that does pretty much. Yeah, and hypothetically, maybe someone watches this and it's like, is that me? Am I becoming an abuser? And maybe you can take steps to avoid going down that path, Anyway, I think because they might have been saying, well, I'm not an abuser because I have some human traits, Yes, that is, yeah, and we have the thing about like, well, I'd really like you to come to Pride, there's several days, and he's like, maybe, and it's of course to Snoop. Yeah, and now I have that song, I guess it's called Shoop, and stuck in my head, which in my, it is in a way my own fault. I rewatched Rye Lane. It was just as amazing the second time around. Now, I guess that does pretty much. There's at least one more thing I really wanted to make sure to say. Let's see. But it wasn't about that scene. It must have been. Yeah. That's when Alex goes to. He was hoping to see Livy, but it's Tamara. And I really love the whole mama bear thing, and I appreciate technically, let's see, I think they're sisters rather than mother-daughter, but, she's very protective of her. And, yeah, genuinely threatens, or I guess maybe it's a promise. And then at the same time, she's like, well, I gotta go pump before I ruin this top. Just the fact that she is a mother now does not make her less of a badass. And I love it. Love to see it. Yeah, let's see, and the fact that he's still Mini Wilder. Yeah, and he does get the gun back. It's a gun buyback, I guess, and yeah, I am a little bit worried. Like, she says that he should use it on his parents, and he doesn't say. I was wondering if he was going to respond something like, well, that's the plan, but yeah, I don't know, there's, mention of a clever plan. He has a cunning plan. And yeah, I'm looking forward to, I'm a little bit dreading what it is. I guess we might find out in the finale of this season, actually, come to think of it. Yeah, I think, and that's also the thing, like, this is a fantastic penultimate episode because you've really got pieces in place for something really compelling. I one of them being Leslie at the hostel. Chase, unclear if he's going to accept Pride or not. Zavin, revealed to be betrothed to Carolina. Yeah, just genuinely really, really great stuff. And Alex, he was hoping to talk to Livy, but he's still, he's continuing down the path that he's been walking recently. And now he has a gun. Ho, ho, ho. That is, yeah, there's really room for it. And Nico, I think I'll cover her slightly later in this video, but with the staff of one, really looking forward to seeing more of, yeah. Anyway, that I think is where we end up at the, yeah, so we start seeing, signs that someone is watching. And by the end of the episode, I feel quite confident saying that was Zavin. She was watching, waiting for the right time to reveal herself. And yeah, so we have the bit with the, them talking about going, and yeah, Nico, the thing about, like, I thought you said we all go or none of us go. Yeah, I was bluffing. Alex called my bluff, and as soon as, yeah, and then Molly, like, just, yeah, immediately part of it, and she's like, the walls are really thin, and I definitely think we should do this, and just like, I know I keep saying it, but I really love her attitude. Just like this yeah. What's the opposite of bad attitude? Good attitude, I guess. Just all, we can do this. We're gonna get there, kind of, yeah. And I think the next thing might have been Chase at Pride, and yeah. So I am afraid I forget her name, but she admits later to have hazed him. But yeah, at first, Kool-Aid, a little bit. And the thing about, like, and it is also, part of it is he knows about the Runaways, not the Runaways he's part of, but the other ones, and she doesn't. And it's not like she'd believe him. It's not like it would be constructive, but obviously it's difficult for him to pretend like they aren't awful. And yeah, she's like, well, why don't you sort the trash? Or, I'm sorry, is that beneath you, rich boy? That was also great. And meanwhile, he's like, I love digging through trash. I mean, evidence. I mean, I'll do it. And he does indeed find one of the discarded things that, yeah. And yeah, he overhears, and he doesn't know exactly what's going on there. He gets something to say to Victor later when he says about the snooping. But yeah, again, like, it's this mix of funny and disturbing, because at one point they're like, well, I mean, it's Wednesday, so. And then the other one goes, nope, it's definitely Monday. That's a 48-hour difference. That is the difference between Jenna Ortega and a really frustrated Garfield. Just, yeah. Let's see. And that brings us to when yeah, so they get in the car, and they drive, and they pick up Vaughn, and the way he's just jazzed about being on the show, man. And he's got Gib outfits for everyone, and all these snack bags. And just, you know what? If not for the obvious issues with that, I feel like there's an AU version of this where, like, Molly and he, if not, like, not necessarily a couple, I forget how old is he. He's older than the high school age, so he's too old for her, obviously. But friends at least, but he's technically somewhat helping Pride, and she's trying to bring down Pride. So yeah, that's not gonna. I also really appreciated Alex saying, he's just Chase is just the first to go. And that is, of course, like, he's being really insensitive about it, but it is this thing of, like, I mean, are they gonna do that? Like, what is the future plan here exactly? Like, they're united by hating Pride, but they're not. I mean, there was a while where it seemed to be going okay. They were starting to become friends again, like before Amy's death. But recently, it's been kind of tense between some of them, and it is this thing of, like, yeah, are you going to live in that hostel for these are teenagers, are they going to live there for 80 years? Like, it is kind of yeah. But yeah, and then Vaughn is like, oh, and Nico, we're gonna have to. I'm not gonna repeat it because it's so cringy, but it did make me chuckle. But yeah, I'm rewording it. He says, she has to get rid of the makeup. And can I just take a second to appreciate? So my wrist, unfortunately, too sore to look it up right now. I'm afraid I forget the actress's name, but the woman who plays Nico, wow, those looks like even Wiccans, even with Wiccans, looks can't kill, or maybe she is just showing some restraint. But like, yeah, Vaughn's lucky is all I'm saying, because those, yeah, fantastic little. Also, really love the thing about, so she can't quite reach the staff, which is, of course, that was the point. She put it there specifically. If she tries to use, to call it to her as she has before, doesn't seem to work. But then she draws from some more power from the dark dimension, and she is able to call it to her, and she brings it on the mission, and it is this thing of like, this is the kind of thing that this could end really badly, and this was exactly why, but at the same time she also put it there in part so that hypothetically she could maybe get it back, so just yeah, really, and I did really like that, like Vaughn says it multiple times, and she says no way in hell, and he's like, that is technically an appropriate choice of words. You know what, Vaughn? Maybe you're sitting there talking about like, oh, the Bronster, you've got serious muscle. Maybe you should stretch. They say the strongest muscle in the human body is the brain. Why don't you put that into practice and stop talking right now, because it's not going to go the way you think. And I appreciate, once Carolina talks to Nico, Nico does agree. And it is this thing of like, sometimes it's not the message, but the messenger. That's the problem. And his messaging also, because just one of the things he says is, they're not going to, they're going to immediately know it at the compound. That's technically a reasonable thing to say. But then he also says, and it is a sign of inner darkness. Vaughn, please stop. You're going to have to stop. And I would recommend you do it right now. But the he was kind of the comic relief character in this episode. Not quite Dale and Stacy or Molly. And let's see, I guess that is when let's see. I'm trying to remember if no, yeah. The next bit is so they arrive at the now I remember. Yeah, Pride Discuss. And we have that thing about like, well, Leslie's missing, and we all know the Gibbs story is BS. And Dale is like, you know what I call Leslie missing? A good start. Oh, is she with the what is that original, like a bunch of lawyers somewhere? Yeah, you probably heard the joke as well. I guess yeah, I don't know if I'm super comfortable with repeating. It is kind of dark, come to think of it. Trying to avoid saying too messed up stuff these days. Anyway, but yeah, they discuss it, and we have that thing about like, well, Victor was Team Weapons too, until it was his son. That's a decent point. And then, he goes like, well, just because you failed to bring your kids back home. Yet another good point. And I think, but yeah, I really appreciate, and that is also, I wouldn't rule out that at least some of the Pride members will go against it, especially if they realize that, because, so basically, yeah, this plan has been formulated by the alien ones. The, let's see, Tina, Stacy, and Victor. Well, I guess, let's see, was Tina part of, I forget if she was part of working this exact out, but yeah, so once the others, if they realize in time, maybe that will have them turn, and that could be a problem for the aliens. So yeah, I think that does. Yeah, I thought this was a really great way to use Zavin in this episode because, like, we might have an idea that might be her. I will say there was at least one point where I thought, is that, like, maybe AWOL or someone else from the strike team hiding and listening? But, it makes perfect sense. We already knew that she could find Carolina anytime, anywhere. She did, and she hid. And I think that does bring us to the crater. And, yeah. I appreciated the running gag of Vaughn. He keeps saying that he's going to take care of it with his brawn. And they, the thing with, like, just send up a flare. You brought a flare gun? Vaughn, later, we'll explain it to you later, okay, sweetie? And, yeah, very clever that Vaughn sneaks Carolina in because he knows enough about the compound. And then, she can go talk to Frank. And I honestly did believe that it was working until it was revealed that it super wasn't. It was not super effective. And I love the decision to use handheld and close-ups and not a huge number of two shots when she is working Frank. Because, like, that, yeah, it really adds to the way we perceive it. It makes it feel even more like he really is buying it. And we, of course, know every word she said. The thing about, like, he may have been my father, but you were my daddy. And, yeah, the, let's see. And he locks her in and says, well, your mother's a better liar. And then he says, and she's like, this isn't you. And he says, this is what the two of you made me. Typical misogynistic cishet white man. I'm not saying all cishet white men are misogynistic, but the ones who are, they like to blame women for the evil that the misogynistic men do. And yeah. And it is genuinely clever, the thing about, like, she's like, this, this prison of theirs won't hold me, Frank. And, he's like, actually it will, but even if it didn't, I will always be there, daughter. Yes. And it is genuinely clever, there's no electricity, so there's nothing she can hijack. Because it's not like she has super strength. She can fly and she can use her powers to manipulate electricity. If there's no electricity, and that's the kind of thing that they do in some of these cult compounds, They shun fancy things like electricity. And I guess that pretty much... Yeah. Genuinely clever that the... Well, let's see. I think, is that maybe when they walk a little closer and... Oh, wait. Yeah. I think Vaughn... No, yeah. I think the very next thing is Susan, letting out not her frustrations, but Carolina. And there they go for the two-shot. And, yeah, genuinely sweet. I wondered if they were going to hug. Ultimately, Carolina and Leslie hug shortly after. But, yeah, and I love that little line about, she introduces herself with, she says, I used to be, and then she gives the number, and Carolina's like, listen, I don't do names instead of numbers instead of names, and Susan's like, no, I said I used to, I don't anymore because of your mother, and that's such a great, because, I was a little bit worried, and they did a great job with this misdirect. I thought this meant that Susan was, digging, she was doubling down, digging deeper, but instead it was the start of her awakening. She's no longer, she still believes in the cult, but she does not agree with keeping Leslie there, and they did a really great job on that because I was surprised. But as soon as she said, I'm not breaking out of here, we're gonna take back the church, because like she didn't say that wasn't what she was doing. We just kind of hoped or assumed, and let's see, I think, yeah. So they managed to get they start moving towards the gate, and Vaughn tells Nico and Molly about it, and they discuss about the wand, the staff, and she's like, I don't know about using it, and the whole thing, and the way that he just keeps going, like, so you're a wizard, Nico? I mean, Gib is the cool church. We get to watch Harry Potter. Does your church let you watch Harry Potter? And she has to remind him, I told you I don't want to compare churches. I should watch that movie a third time. Plan B, 2021. Anyway, let's see, I think that does bring us to, yeah, and they talk about, maybe we could at least get a little closer and be able to see. And I love the fact that she, at first I was expecting Nico to actually use the staff, but the fact that she didn't, and then later explains, she's a little bit relieved because she doesn't want to use it, and what kind of a leader is she if she can't use her power, and this whole thing. Because genuinely, like, I'm worried about what's going to happen when she next, because I don't think she's done using the staff. This episode makes it clear that she's definitely still tempted. When the going gets tough, she's still going to want to use the staff. And yeah, it is this thing of like she felt powerless for so long because Amy's death and all. And now she has power, but it's changing her and she doesn't like it. And yeah, just really, really well done. And it works well as a metaphor for addiction, maybe, which, that is something that teenagers, it's one of those things you have to be careful about, like what age. I think I read it once. What is an appropriate age to talk to a young person about addiction? But certainly it's, by the time, so yeah, once again, this show is like for ages 14 and up, and once someone is 14, it is important to talk about that. Listen, I'm not doing some kind of, alarmist moral panic about like, schools are just overflowing with drugs. I'm just saying there's going to be some kind of temptation. It doesn't even have to be drugs. There's other things you can become addicted to. And, when you're a teenager, you're figuring out your identity. That for some, that means, facing that temptation. And if you are not prepared, if you haven't learned about it, you won't be able to identify it. It just feels good, And yeah, I think yeah, so it was very clever, the thing about, so there's the Susan, I think, was, handed over some paper, and, supposedly this is, signed in hand by Frank, so, I mean, I guess it's not impossible Susan can forge this guy's signature, but, this big kind of muscly guy, he reads it, and he says, open the pod bay doors, Hal, if you can let them do that. And I suppose it's possible. Maybe it genuinely, maybe it has a forged signature by, yeah, a signature that looks like Frank's, but it's really written by Susan. Personally, I think, he unraveled that paper, read it, and it said, I have an extra protein bar for you if you let us out. And the let's see, I guess that does bring us to the, yeah, and so that first gate is open, but the second one isn't, and now they're actually kind of more trapped than they were before, which is a good kind of expectation subversion, and the staff comes out, and he's like, you really are a wizard. I think that's as close as I'm going to be able to get to his accent. Anyway, the I guess I'll just very briefly note, I appreciate that there continue to be a number of leftist videos by people who know significantly more about J.K. Rowling and Harry Potter than I that criticize her recent transphobia. Yeah, some of the best by Meet Your Archetype, Jesse Gender, and Council of Geeks. Now, I guess, yeah, very, very clever that Carolina does use the faith and, the radiance, and all of them kneel. And I also really appreciate, I appreciate, it might also be this thing of like, well, he's the leader, so of course, nearly all of them are wearing white. He's wearing black. I think even the guards were wearing white, He does have darkness. And he insists that she is, the yeah, I forget his exact words, but he says that it's not really the thing that and that's excuse me, obviously not going to work on them. So yeah, very nicely done there. And I think that's when they yeah, and the thing, what we do to apostates, don't you, Frank? And he ends up inside that. And I don't know if we're going to see if he's going to get out of there or if this is the last time we see that character. I don't think it's a problem if the latter, because I don't know. I wouldn't rule out they can still think of something interesting to do with him, but this does feel to me like a compelling arc because he really did have a chance. He could have just done good, but he wanted adulation, and that mattered more to him than any other, so he'll hurt Leslie and even Carolina. Just yeah, and I really appreciate that we sat with, not for terribly long because it's a TV show, it's like less than 50 minutes. They got to keep things moving, but we didn't immediately see. I think actually there might have been an ad break there. We didn't immediately see Carolina be let out by Susan. I think that pretty much right. That actually, come to think of it, somewhere around here we have so Alex is like cleaning the gun, and we have Gert. So this I felt like in this episode it worked, the way they use her progressive values, because she points out rightly that there's going to be an accident with that gun. You get that, right? And right, I also really like the thing about like, well, what if Chase tells our parents about the hostel, and Gert just has one insult after another, and one of them has to be like, skip to the end, and eventually she says, well, he's not a traitor. And yeah, so Gert talking to Alex, I am here for, and good acting as well by the guy who plays Alex. The little thing of like, she doesn't literally say the name Ben Shapiro, but she does say, I know you're all facts over feelings these days. I mean, in 2018, that's definitely a reference to, yeah, appreciate that. I don't think Alex did. I don't think he was a fan of that, but it's kind of accurate. And although I guess a bunch of things Alex has said are actual facts, not like distorted ones, so it's not 100%, but he is being very insensitive. And I think that does bring us to, I feel like there's at least one more thing. Yeah, so we have the thing, I don't know, I didn't really need the joke about like, oh, she burps and, really, really hungry, and I don't know. It was a little funny when Alex was like, could you leave like right now, please? But it's old lace being fed, and and her talking about like, I mean, they're probably gonna have to deal with the fakes. It's old lace is not gonna eat fake steaks forever, but I mean, as long as they make sure that she's fed, this is wonderful. I'm not alone in the universe, and that's a little bit sad, but also yay, good. And And then when they come back, she's like, next time don't forget the driver. I mean, I appreciate that you did drive, but you didn't seem to love it last time. Oh, I guess, wait, maybe that was lack of medication, I suppose. But I think that does pretty much cover the... I like that when Carolina thinks that she's looking at Gert, that she doesn't say stop being a jerk. She's like, did you stop taking your medication? Like, she's genuinely concerned, which is very Carolina. And, because that could easily be framed as an insult, like the way a jerk character would have said would be like, go take your pills or something, but and also really good acting on because that is the actress who plays Gert, pretending to be Zam and pretending to be Gert, and saying, well, I figured I should probably approach you wearing your friend's skin. That didn't come out exactly how I had hoped.